Good evening. My name is Marcia Robinson, and we are recording an oral history with the members of the athletic department and coaching department at Miami University as part of the Sweet MUMories Oral History Project. This is to mark the 50th anniversary of the Miami University Middletown, Ohio campus. This interview is taking place at Bennett Recreation Center on November 8th, 2016. So, coaches and cheerleader, do I have your permission to begin this interview?
Yes.
Thank you. So what do you remember about sports and that journey from Warriors to ThunderHawks? Where would you like to start?
Start at the beginning.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. And along with that beginning story, can we also talk about the founding of the ORC conference as well?
Okay, well, kind of two different issues. The beginning of the athletic program here was just a basketball program. 1967, I was approached by a faculty member here, and I was at that time working in Oxford, teaching in the School of Education, mathematics, and was asked to start a basketball program over here. So, and that's what we did. We had no real facility. All we had was Johnson Hall and the library, I think, and maybe Theskin. But the basketball started really across the street in Manchester Junior High. And we had probably 45, 50 young men try out for the basketball team. We really had no schedule, no place to play, and no players at the time. No uniforms, no budget, et cetera, et cetera. But with the support of Dr. Eugene Bennett, our executive director, and some faculty support, we got it rolling. And we developed a schedule playing basically whoever we could get to play. There were a few other regional campuses had teams, but we ended up playing some local corporate teams, like Armco had teams, that we played faculty teams from high schools, just trying to get things started. And by the end of the year, we probably played 18 games, as I remember. I don't know. I'd have to look in the record books, but it was pretty. It was a pretty not a very sophisticated program, to say the least, to get it started. But and I think I recall this. Initially, we called ourselves the Bulldogs, I believe, for the first year or two. I don't know if anybody even remembers that, or is that in the records anywhere?
There's a newspaper article.
Yeah, I think we were the Bulldogs at one point. And I hope it isn't because that was the name of my high school team, but it was the name of my high school team. But I don't recall how we became that. So that was the start of that. The ORCC was the result of, as the schools started developing programs, you would go down to Ohio University, Portsmouth, and you might be playing a semi-pro team. People that were taking 1 hour or 3 hours, or had enrolled to play that weekend. It was not a very pretty picture. And as we got rolling after a year or two, we started finding that the other regional campuses were getting on board with starting only basketball teams at this point. And we decided we really had to have some kind of a developed program to make it really a worthwhile thing and something that we could be proud of. And at that point, I remember I contacted some regional campuses down in, I think it was Tampa, Florida, Orlando, Florida, who was doing something very much like this, and they sent me their constitution and bylaws for a conference. And I got a hold of, I think it was Jim Russell at Ohio State Lima, and Gary Weaver from Ohio State. Russell was from Newark, and Gary Weaver from Lima. And we sat down and changed a lot of the wording and started inserting the names of our teams. And we found out we had certain teams in the state at that point that didn't want these restrictions, like you had to take so many hours and you had to pass so many hours, and etc. So it was, again, it was just something new. It wasn't something that fell in place, but it turned out, the people got on board. We had people who got pretty serious about it, and executive directors got involved, and they would come to some of our meetings, and so that was really the start of the ORCC. I don't remember the original number of teams, but I know you've expanded since I've been going, but that's why and how we got it started.
And so we're still connected with ORCC. So from the beginning of it, we now have the conference leader, I believe. So Coach Miller, could you tell us about your current role with ORCC?
Well, I am the commissioner of the ORCC, and I think this might be my 4th year, maybe. But we've had teams come and go, but the basic teams that originally started when Lynn started that are still there. And we try to govern the academic progress of students and make sure that everybody who's playing a sport is eligible according to our guidelines. And so that's one of the big jobs that I have, checking everybody's eligibility. The other thing is, we provide a conference schedule for all of the teams that we support. And so we have a conference schedule already in place, and then other schools just pick up other games to fill in their spots. We support 8 teams: men's and women's tennis, softball, baseball, golf, men's and women's basketball, and volleyball.
So it started off with one team. And did that team have cheerleaders? Did families come out to the games? What were those first games like?
I think the crowds were rather slim at first because trying to start any program, it's difficult. And as he said, we played at Manchester Junior High. And the team, as I recall, from a lot of different area towns, from Springboro and Middletown and Trenton, and some pretty good players. The cheerleaders were from 5 different places as well. And our sponsor was Ned Holzer of the business department. I don't know how that man got stuck with that, but he was. But yeah, there were 5 of us on the first squad and 6 the next year. So. But slim crowds at first, I think.
All right. So what were the first road trips like?
I wasn't on a first road trip because I didn't come until the early 80s. But most of the time I was assistant coach with Coach Sliger. And he gave me the job of fixing the lunch for the kids on our trip going. Because he used to do it, and I know he got tired of doing it because I got tired of doing it pretty quickly. But we'd take orders and we'd have peanut butter sandwiches and all the good stuff, cheese sandwiches, pickles, and all that kind of stuff. So that's what our road trip was. We made sure that we fed the girls anyway at an appropriate time so that they could perform their very best. So all that fruit and peanut butter paid off most of the time.
And Coach Miller's lunches were a lot better than Coach Sliger's lunches.
Because she took orders.
Yeah, that's right. I was going to say, I played for Coach Sliger, and Coach Miller was our assistant coach my senior year. When Coach Sliger, and God love his wife Jenny, would help make the lunches, you had 2 choices. You had cheese and mayonnaise, and you had peanut butter, and you had peanut butter and jelly. And we had fruit, and we had drinks. And that was it. You that's what you had. You had choices. Now, Coach Miller took orders. And when I was her assistant coach, we let them pick what they wanted to eat, and we gave them a little variety of what they could drink, and trail mix, spoiled them. But Coach Sliger, it was almost bread and water. But no, but we all survived, and we really appreciated the lunches. I think we were the only teams that were fed like an hour and a half, 2 hours prior to our games. And a lot of times our road trips were 2 hours, maybe even longer here and there. But that's what kind of food that we had on our road trips.
Well, I can tell you some of the early road trips were done traveled by station wagon, university station wagon, with like 8 basketball players crammed into a station wagon. And it wasn't that comfortable, and we didn't have, our coach didn't make us sandwiches. No, that wasn't happening.
Listen, these people were whining. The real original trips were in my GTO. Some guy had a Volkswagen and somebody else had a Ford Fairlane, and we traveled the first year. You guys were spoiled. And Ned Helzer, who mentioned Ned Helzer? Ned's the gentleman that asked me to come over and coach the team. Ned got with the university, and we started getting, remember the red station wagons we took?
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And then it was an interesting story how every year I put in to try to get a van for our campus here. And every year it just wouldn't happen. And they had a fleet of vans later on, even after what they're called. But this was an interesting thing. One day, Dr. Bennett, one time he asked me to go to the budget meeting with Phil Schreiber, who was the president of Miami, one of the finest individuals ever to be in education. But anyway, we went in and with that meeting, and it came to the part in the budget about having a van for our campus. And President Schreiber said to me, he says, Lynn, he said, how do you guys get to games now? I said, well, me and an assistant or a student or somebody, we drive to Oxford and get these cars. We bring them to Middletown. We go to Zanesville and play a game. We drive home, then we drive them back to Oxford, and we come back to the Middletown campus or wherever we live. And his reaction was that that's inhuman. I said, well, that's what I've been saying for several years. And with that, he says, you will have a van. And that's how we got started, at least traveling in vans. I thought the station wagons were wonderful after driving our cars. But you remember some of those days, you faced the back way.
Right. Yeah.
Somebody's sitting in the back of those 3 people, and we couldn't get any heat back there in the winter, if you remember that. And then I think, Jim, you would have been playing that. For years when I was still coaching, my brother was an executive with Ponderosa Steakhouses. So we ate a lot of steaks, very cheaply, and they practically fed us all over the state of Ohio because we would stop and eat. And we had something like $3.50 for a meal, didn't we, for people?
Yeah, we had a meal allowance every time we would go. Yeah.
But
We're still kind of at $3.50.
You're not up to $4
Not
yet? No?
quite.
But anyway, and yeah, they program. I don't know how you're traveling now. If they have vans now, or are you renting vans, or I don't know what's going on even with the.
Yeah. We travel in rented vans.
That's nicer,
and,
really.
We're lucky because Enterprise. Enterprise has a contract with Miami. And so since we have an Enterprise place here in Middletown, they bring the vans to us.
That's great.
So we don't have to go get them. So that's a plus for us.
Well, can we evolve the sports program? So we've started with the first men's basketball team. We've talked about a women's team, but we didn't say when they started. Does anybody remember when the women's basketball team started?
Yeah, it was 1977. Okay.
And you were a student here, right?
I had played basketball for 3 years, and I was completing my degree really in Oxford, maybe taking one class here, but completing my degree in Oxford at that time. And Lynn asked me if I wanted to coach the women's team because they were looking at starting a women's team, and sure. So that's how it started, and we had a list of athletes that were on campus. You know, it was December already, and we got them out to play. We formed a team, and it was fun. I mean, they had a great time. We had some really good athletes. I think we only played like 7 games that first year, but won a game in the state tournament, got to the semifinals, and so had some success, and that started the team. Now that was an interesting road trip up to the state tournament because my athletic director, did me a favor and got us transportation up there in a motorhome that his friend was driving.
first class.
His friend who had one eye, who has one eye, and it is snowing like crazy, and we're going up there, and I'm in the passenger seat, turned around facing backwards because there's a fancy motorhome and you could do that, and I was talking to the players, and it's snowing, and Carl is saying, you know, I probably should have practiced driving this before I brought it out for the first time and stuff, and he's flying along there. And we hit a big old bump, and I see the girl's eyes get real big, and he goes something like, you know, that guy shouldn't have been out there getting the mail like that. It was hysterical. Had a CB radio on it, and the girls' team got a hold of the CB radio, and they're talking to truck drivers back then. And, oh, yeah, this is the women's basketball team. And so every trucker in Ohio is now following the women's basketball team. I was scared to death when we pulled in the parking lot of the hotel. I'm figuring there's going to be 12, 18-wheelers following us. But it worked out. Yeah. It worked out, but it was a fun experience.
It really wasn't a postman someone getting the mail that was 10 years from now.
No, there was not. There was not. That was just his sense of humor. His sense of humor.
All right. So does anybody remember the first game in this building? Or the first year in this building?
1972. Right.
Donnie would be the best historian.
I joined Lynn in 1970 as I believe his first assistant coach, and we played at that time. He had evolved the program into playing our games and practices down at Wade E. Miller Gymnasium here in Middletown, and that was really a classy spot to play games. But during those years, they were in the process of building this building, and we moved into in here in the fall of 1972, and we had just won the state championship in basketball, first time ever, the previous winter, and we were expecting a lot of turnout for kids to play basketball. I think we had 11 kids come out. 2 of the kids had never played high school basketball that year, and so it was more of a struggle there than we thought it was going to be after coming off winning the state tournament. But we always had good kids, kids that would play for the heart and soul of the program, and it was the first year playing in here was kind of a dream that we just didn't have to go anywhere to travel to take our equipment or anything like that, and had the ability to have our own gymnasium.
You talk about the students, and I noticed you're all still here after all these years. We're talking about the founding story. You stayed, you taught, you coached, and you're still here telling stories. Can you talk about this feeling of longevity and continuity and connection with the community? What does it mean to be so well established here?
The thing I would say about that is why this program has been the blue ribbon program really at regional campuses, because of Cheryl and Jim, and I mean they're like, I left years ago, but the continuity has stayed, and realistically, we had a lot higher expectations, I would say, for our student athletes overall, and I think they always came through. I mean, some of the programs you weren't real proud of playing at times because quite frankly, the leadership wasn't what it should have been when you're representing a university and representing your family and yourself. And I'm assuming, any games I come to where I still see the same kind of product that we've had for 40 years or whatever, 50 years, whatever it is now. And by that I mean we just, people that run these programs have expectations of kids, and kids meet those, and they like that. People like to be part of something good. In the old days, and I'm talking the old days back when, our student athletes wore suit and tie or sport coat and tie every place we went. We'd go into restaurants and anywhere, people always commented on the behavior of them, always commented on the appearance of them, and those were just things of bygone time. That's the way things were. I mean, the pros were doing it, the colleges were doing it, and our athletes, when they did things that weren't good for their reputation and Miami University, they were held accountable for it. and in a good way, a positive way. My feeling has always been, if you're an institution of higher education, you have an athletic team. If it isn't educational, then why do you have it? And if you don't have high expectations of that, then I don't know why you have it. I really don't. And I think that's the thing that has made Middletown over the years. I haven't been around that much lately, but everything I've seen makes me feel that's what we're still about at Miami University Middletown.
What was interesting back in the early 70s when long hair was in and stuff like that, Lynn had he had a dress code, hair rule, and things like that. They had to look good, and our players would complain a lot to us about that. But yet we go on the road and they'd come over and say, "Boy, look how grungy that team looks. They don't look very neat or anything like that." And we played some ragtag regional campuses that, like you said, the coaches didn't have that much expectation for the kids, and the kids kind of exemplified what their expectations were. And we were always proud of the behavior of our kids and the way they looked and dressed, and it was something that we felt represented Miami University Middletown all over the state well.
We were fortunate in that Lynn started a program, and he was a student at Miami University and was a student athlete at Miami University, so had a really wonderful athletic program. And when he established the program here, it had the same level of commitment and the same foundations that Miami Oxford did. And our student athletes were held to that same standards as a Division I student athlete. They didn't get all the perks of that, but they were pretty much held to those standards, and I think they appreciated that. They wanted to be treated like that, and that foundation has really carried the Middletown campus and has been a standard throughout the 50 years. And we're very lucky to have that, again, that solid foundation for our program.
Sharon, did you want to talk about what it's like to be formed by this team of coaches as a student athlete?
Well, I was going to reflect on what Coach Sliger just said. I was fortunate enough to be in the first women's basketball camp that was held here at the university, and that's where Coach Sliger and I first met. And at that time, in the late 70s, early 80s, women's programs were not respected. I mean, we were always second in line to the boys for whatever they had at my high school. And so when it was offered that a women's basketball camp or a girls' basketball camp was being offered here in Middletown, it was a great opportunity for high school girls athletes at that time to come and experience what would be expected of them at the next level, or even to get more experience in the basic skills of basketball. And so being part of that first camp and learning those skills, Coach Sliger met me and then recruited me later on to come and play here. And I felt very honored at the time because of just the respect that the athletes that worked here had and the coaches that he brought in had for us as athletes. Just made you want to be a part of that. And by no means was I ever the best player that ever walked on this floor, but Coach Sliger instilled in you to become the best that you could become. And in that, I was shy. It was hard for me to come out of my shell, and basketball was one of the things that helped me to grow as a person, to decide that education was what I wanted to do and that I could perform in front of people, that I could speak in front of people, and from that I got involved with student government, and it just helped rounded me as an individual here on the campus. And so I was fortunate enough to be influenced by Coach Sliger. In my senior year, Coach Miller came on as our assistant women's basketball coach and got to work with her for a year. And once again, just quality people, what they expected of you, how they expected you to behave, how they treated you, how they expected you to treat others, just the family feeling that was built there. And after leaving here and getting my degree, I went on and worked at Kings Junior High School and coached there at all levels and all sports. And I was fortunate enough that Coach Miller called me one day and said, I need an assistant women's basketball coach. Would you consider coming back and coaching with me? And I came in and interviewed and got the position and enjoyed 13 more years of being here on this campus, working with the type of athletes that we produce here at MUM, you know, from hometowns around the area that may not be the top quality person when they come, but being on this campus, being exposed to what's here on this university with the type of people that they meet, grow as individuals, go back out into the community and become teachers and businessmen and whatever, and then send their students to MUM and come back and work as athletes. And it's just great to see that cycle. And though I'm retired from the athletics now, just being here as part of as an adjunct professor, seeing the type of athletes that come into my classroom as basketball players, tennis players, whatever, and meeting them and seeing still the type of quality of people that they are and what they're becoming is just makes this just a well-rounded community of all types of people.
You may not know this, but in the interviews we've had so far, the rumor is that you all looked out for your student athletes as humans, even if that meant finding work for them to do so they could stay here as students. How did you know that people needed work?
Well, that's kind of when Sharon was talking, made me realize, well, what's unique about our student athletes and what's so special about them. You know, again, a student athlete at a Division I school, they're a student and an athlete, and that's all they do. Here, our kids, most of them were full-time students, competing in athletics and working full, some maybe even part-time. I mean, maybe some full-time, most part-time. Almost all of them had jobs to balance with their academics and athletics. Some had families. You know, we'd have players who were married and had kids, and it was what a wonderful experience and a neat way to get an education, you know, through the people you meet and get exposure to all different people with different lifestyles. And you valued their time because you knew how valuable it was that you were getting maybe an hour and a half for practice. And they'd come in and work like crazy. And I was in awe a lot of times of our student athletes, that they could do what they did. I don't know how they did it, but we just had special kids, and that's what athletics meant to them. It was that important to them that they would make sacrifices in order to be a part of the team.
Well, that's probably the thing that makes the regional campuses the most special for a lot of us. Like I say, I came over from Oxford after 4 years. When I got here and saw what our student body makeup was really something. I had some health problems, had to get out of coaching, so then I got involved in other parts of the university, student government, student organization, financial aid, stuff like that. And to further in what they're saying, if we had people come here that are 40, 50 years old who had never really been out in front of people, and they get involved in some of our activities in athletics, but also in these other things, they blossom to a totally different person. We had a president of our student body was 45 years old one time and had never been a leader, and by the end of the experience, he was the most excited person and was a real difference maker everywhere. And in the athletic thing, when these guys came out here, they knew it was kind of their last shot at doing something, but it's the most healthy shot ever because they're not being paid. They're doing it because of love and their heart was in it. And I remember calling with the president at that time. I said, you know, when we're talking about the van, our travel and all that stuff, and Dr. Shriver is phenomenal. I said, you know, our court's the same length as Oxford Court. Our pain is the same running suicides or running drills and doing. I said, the effort's the same. We don't expect to be treated at that level, but we ought to be treated and he was just so, and Dr. Bennett was so supportive of all that anyhow. I mean, he would have pushed for anything, but it just, I remember the highlight of everything was when we would go, I don't know if they still have these big events in Oxford where they would recognize top students on all the campuses, and we would have 8 or 10 people get nominated, and they'd go over there and they'd start telling what all they did in life, and the students over there were shocked. And I would go to the meeting on every Monday in Oxford, and the people in our department, student affairs department, say, I can't believe what I heard. Your mother of 4, working full-time, doing this, and president of your student body. I mean, those are special people, and we were lucky to deal with people like that. And then, and so a lot of those people, like he said, our all-state center, our high school basketball team playing for us, he had 2 children. His wife traveled to games with us, and so they just made a lot of sacrifice. But it was worth it to them. They got something out of it. They contributed something to their own life by doing it. And we were lucky to be part of it.
Considering the challenges that the students had that you've just described, how is it that we became champions so many times? How do you do that?
We were better than the other teams.
We scored more points.
We scored more points. We did. Our athletes put a lot of time in it, and I think it's because the coaches that we've had demanded that they put the time in. We were certainly considerate of their time and our time as well. But we wanted them to be champions, and these are the things that you have to do to be a champion. If you're not willing to do it, then you probably aren't going to stay in this program. But if you are willing to do it, there's a chance that you can be a champion, that you'll get to meet a whole lot of great people across the state of Ohio, and they, more importantly, will meet you. And there'll be a lot of people who will know your name because of what you do. And those are just the basic things that we strive to have the athletes accomplish each and every day. It's not always fun. I always told my teams, we're going to practice for 90 minutes, and if we cannot get it done in 90 minutes, there's something we're doing wrong. So let's go 90 minutes and do it right, and we're done. Didn't always work, but most of the time.
And we didn't always win championships,
No.
but we did a lot. And even when we didn't, I think the kids felt like champions.
Right.
They were treated like champions. We had those expectations of them, and they appreciated that. And I think was one of the keys is getting good kids, really good players, and then having high expectations of them and holding them accountable to those. And they welcomed that. And those are the type of kids that make champions.
Well, and I think the thing, it always goes, to me, it went back to, we all had good mentors probably. I didn't have a father when I grew up, but I had high school coaches, a Hall of Fame football coach. My high school basketball coach went to Northwestern. I mean, just unbelievable teachers and things. But my point being, and Dr. Bennett saying, I remember, you hire good people, they can do anything. And I always felt, and what Jim's saying here, and Cheryl and Don, I know how we all lived this. I could never tell the difference when I was the athletic director if our women's team, or when Jim was coaching and Cheryl, I couldn't tell if they had a good year or a bad year other than I knew the results, the way they treated their athletes. Our banquets were the same. They were just as proud of their athletes if we were 5-20 or if we were 20-5. And that's what I think is really key, and the respect they got from their athletes because of the kind of people they are. And I think that's what it's all about. It's, again, old guy, I don't understand how major universities watch their coaches on the sidelines with these foul mouths going all the time on national TV. I'm sorry. That, in my reign, that didn't happen at this place. And I had a coach break his fist on the door over there one time, leaving the gym after we lost. And wow, we met the next day. That doesn't happen here. He became a better coach because of that. And he would tell you that. In fact, he's a very successful Division I baseball coach. But my point being, I think that's the kind of thing. Athletes, I'm sure they don't now, they were never abused here. They were, they work hard. It's tough being an athlete here. I mean, it's supposed to be, if you want to be good. And not just and a good person. And so I think that's really the key. And it's, And you just see so much of that not happening at a lot of places, to be honest. The berating of young people and you know, it's not life and death, it's competition. And we need mature people running programs. And I think they've been lucky. Not lucky, it's because good people are hiring good people, is what I think. I'm not talking about me, I'm just talking about in general. Dr. Bennett.
Dr. Bennett.
And we'd like to talk about some of the other sport programs. We spent a lot of time talking about basketball. We're recording in a gym. There's the volleyball program, there's golf, tennis, baseball has come up frequently in conversations. Can you tell us about some of the other sport programs that have taken place here at MUM?
Well, the tennis program probably started about 74, 73, 74.
Outstanding, too.
And part of that was because Lynn was able to hire a faculty member here, Don Ferris, who loved tennis and loved teaching, and he took on the men's and women's tennis program, and you know, he was able to get kids out there to play, and that he had no problem getting players, getting a team, and they had great success. He was a good teacher and again, a great leader. And being here on campus, it's really special that a faculty member will take additional time and coach a team. And that's rare, and what a great bonus that was to have him.
And his players loved him and respected him. I mean, it was that kind of relationship, and he loved them. That was, and our baseball program, we had 3 guys go from here into Division Division I, and we're Greg McVeigh.
Greg McVeigh's a Division II school.
We had guys go that coached here that were big-time baseball players in the United States. So our golf program is always strong.
And that baseball program had that kind of success and never had a baseball field. There's not a baseball field on campus. And so they had to grounds, go use high school fields or parks and things like that. And you know, so they were really kind of hamstrung to begin with, but the coaching was strong enough that they were able to have great success.
And at one point, we went down to Smith Park. Were you playing or coaching?
I coached one year. Yeah.
Coach, and we created a field and built dugouts, right?
Yeah.
Volunteers built dugouts. We had a field down there, and now I think they're out at Monroe. They probably lost that field, didn't they? With that destruction of the high school?
We haven't lost it yet. We have put a lot of time and effort in down to the old facility at Monroe. We spent the last 6 or 7 years putting time and effort. And,
where are you playing now?
That's where we're playing so far. I think they're about ready to start playing some of their games back there. But we did a lot of renovations down there and brought it back to a level that was acceptable for us to play down there. So we've been fairly lucky because we've been down there for the last 6 years or so and had a place where we could go. Not that it was very accessible, but it was a field. And
our golf program has been wonderful, and we're in a great area for golf. We have Weatherwax Golf Course, which was a great, wonderful asset for this community, and we attracted a lot of good golfers, wonderful golfers. There's a year when we competed in Cincinnati Inquirer Invitational. It was put on by Xavier University, Xavier, UC, Moorhead, a number of Division I schools. We finished second, and one of our golfers was the medalist. We beat Division I schools, and we just had good golfers. We were able to attract them, and we've had kids. I bet we've had half a dozen, 6 to 10 different golfers who went on to be PGA club professionals, and that's a real feather in our cap that they were able to use this program to advance to that level.
About how many student athletes do you think have come through the program here at MUM?
Okay, let's
Math
think.
person, let's go.
That'd take a
Figure that
while.
out, will you?
That would be
Well, just think 50 a year times 40, that's 2,000.
at least.
At least.
Over 2,000. At least 50 a year, probably more than that.
See, when we started this athletic program, we were forbidden to have anybody play on the campus that wasn't within commuting distance of the campus. So and in fact, we weren't even going into Dayton. We were doing basically just this area within 15, 20 miles. We sneaked Phil in there with Leonard and Gene, and I see now, and I think what's wonderful about the 4-year opportunities we're going to have here now, that I think this could open some really great doors for the world of athletics and in the regional campuses. I mean, I know some people, Claremont, Indiana East, some people are now NCAA sponsored or involved with them, but we weren't allowed to go get people that couldn't commute here, and now they can come to the apartments. There's no rule against it at all, is there? I hope not. I mean, I wouldn't. We're going to China and getting them. That's right.
Yeah.
I can give you a good story on a student athlete. My first year coaching men's basketball, I was fortunate enough that someone in the admissions office called me in the summer and said, "Hey, we had a tall young man in here ask about the basketball program." I said, "Get his name and number. If he's tall, that's wonderful." He was taking a summer class, lived in Arcanum. That's an hour and 15 minutes away. First semester, he commuted from Arcanum and played basketball for us. After the first semester, he had accumulated 20 hours where he could live on campus in Oxford. And he took his 15 hours at Oxford, second semester, and continued to take 7 hours here so he could play basketball. And he drove back and forth from Oxford to take classes and play basketball while taking, I guess it was 12 hours. He had to take 12 hours at Oxford full time. And he did that the second year also, and became a Kodak Scholar. And third year, he wasn't able to continue playing. He also played baseball here also. And he graduated from the School of Business in 3 years. Now, at the time, he kind of did that under the radar. I didn't let him know that he was doing that because the School of Business would have had a fit if they'd known someone could graduate in 3 years. He graduated in 3 years and played basketball for 2 years, was an all-conference basketball player and a good baseball player, and a tremendous young man. And that's the kind of sacrifices kids would make to compete athletically. And we had a program that was attractive enough to them that they would make those sacrifices.
From the first conversations about creating this university campus, the word opportunity for our children has appeared in many of the original documents. From what you just described, opportunity is what someone was looking for. Can you talk about opportunity and what it means to our student athletes and to our community? Opportunity.
Well, we provide an opportunity to continue to play a sport that you love. So there are a lot of people who play basketball. There are a lot of people who play volleyball. A lot of people who play baseball who throughout their years in high school or in playing youth sports and things, and they play. But we get the special kids and give them an opportunity to continue to play the sport that they actually love to play. And without athletics, those kids would not, they may not come here. They may go anywhere else, maybe closer to their home or now online, some different things. But they continue to have a good, competitive program where they find reward and loss. They deal with all those things, doing what they love most. Sometimes loving the sport sometimes gets in the way of maybe being a student because they love the sport so much they forget about being a student sometimes. But our coaches do a decent job of bringing them back to being a student, being an athlete, and performing at both places.
And we could all name people that if it weren't for a regional campus, they're out teaching, coaching very successfully, that had no business really, they had no interest in going to college. They came here to play baseball, basketball, or something. They came here and they enjoyed it so much they kept going to classes. And I know we're not allowed to mention names, but I'm talking Monroe, and we got several examples. We could tell you that because they had an interest, and it turned into they wanted to keep playing. They had to keep taking classes. And now we see people going to college, big colleges. They have no interest other than getting the NBA or the NFL. And but these people, they sort of came here with that just to play. They're now educators or engineers, whatever, because they survived and they grew and they grew. And all of us tutored them. A lot of them we fed and gave clothing or helped with, and those are the great stories for us that deal with the population here.
One of the questions I always got asked was, people didn't understand that, when I told them I would recruit players, they said, how would you go out and recruit players if you don't have scholarships? And I didn't understand. I said, well, it's easy. I always thought it was easy to recruit players because we gave them the opportunity. Unless they were a Division I athlete, and there are very few Division I athletes in high schools. You're lucky if you have a Division I scholarship athlete in your high school each year. So unless they were a Division I athlete, it was hard for them to continue competing unless they wanted to go to a Division II or Division III school. They go to Division III school and they're going to pay an exorbitant amount of money to continue to compete athletically. Here, they could come at a fraction of the cost and get a Miami University degree. I thought, that's pretty simple. You get to continue competing at a sport you love for a fraction of the cost that you pay for an education elsewhere, and you're getting a Miami University degree. That was pretty easy to sell, I always thought.
And along that lines with opportunity, I remember having been a student athlete here, going out interviewing for my first jobs. It didn't matter that I played basketball at Miami University in Middletown. What mattered was that I was a student athlete in a college program and that I had made that commitment to that program and was able to maintain my grades, make a dedication of hours to that program, and be a successful athlete, student, worker, and come out with a degree. And it didn't matter that it was that I played at Miami University Middletown. All it mattered was that superintendents and principals would interview me and just look at me and say, "Oh, you played college athletics?" And I'd say, yes, I did. And that was all that mattered, that I made that commitment. And this place gave me that opportunity to do that.
I've kept you talking for quite a while, but I know each of you has something that you'd like to make sure that future researchers know about our athletic program. So speaking to the researchers of the future, what is it that you want them to know for certain about athletics at MUM?
I'll do the easy part. Getting to be involved in student activities and then growing from those activities. I did the cheerleader thing for 2 years, yes, but the third year I got to be involved when we hosted the tournament here. So I got to organize the luncheon for this particular competition and organize this. I ordered the cheerleading competition and the Queens competition that all was part of the state tournament. And what was I, 20 years old, and they let me put this stuff together and make these arrangements and didn't tell me no. And I've done all kinds of things like that since, because I had the experience here. And the part about, yes, the athletes get to come and continue their sports, but many of them were like me, where I wouldn't have had the money to go to Oxford at the time, or another campus. So this gave me, and being involved in the sports program was a way to stay active in the school and maybe make it a little better place for other people.
I think the thing that the university shouldn't lose sight of, I don't know if this is historically or not, is these kind of programs, and student government, student orgs, fraternities, sororities, whatever, but particularly athletics, these are some of your best recruitment opportunities available. If you're doing it right, if people are going back to their high school and say, I'm playing at Miami Middletown, and man, this has really been great. I'm traveling here. I'm doing this. It's really a solid program. The baseball, wonderful here, or the whatever it is. Those are your recruiters. That's the same with when anybody recruiting. Your players are the people going to turn on recruits or turn off recruits. If you're mistreating anybody, that can't be good for what you're trying to sell as what you're all about. And so I think, again, that kind of goes back to the quality of people. If you're doing it right and young people see it's doing right and their friends are going there and they're having success and they're getting it done, I just think, that's what's kept this going. And this is 50 years. That's amazing. And so I think that's really something that can kind of lose sight of for just even recruiting and selling your program. When we do our Hall of Fame lunch, I just love coming back to the dinners for the Hall of Fame, and they're not talking about their English class or their math class or their philosophy. They're talking about what they did here, who they met here, how they grew here, and like Diane, which is that's sort of, and we that's the way it is in life, and sometimes if you don't have those kind of things, it really it makes it tougher bringing people in.
The one thing I think that special about our program is the people and the young people that compete on the teams, and the opportunity again that they're going to meet other student athletes and get to work toward a goal, and in doing so they make lifelong friends. I'm sure Sharon could speak to that. She can remember the players, the teammates she had, and they're close today, still close today. Those are your lifelong friends, and it's the only place I know where you get to get that kind of working relationship where everyone gives so much and makes so many sacrifices toward a goal. It's hard to get those relationships in other activities. And it makes athletics special. It makes athletics on this campus special.
I think it was the athletics was part of basically Lynn in the beginning, and then Jimmy giving life to this campus, campus life, rather than for students just coming here and going to class and getting in their car and going home. The athletic program, Jimmy said we weren't champions all the time, but if you look at how many times we won the all-sports trophy, maybe basketball didn't have a good season, but golf did, or tennis did, or women's volleyball, and they all kept each other up. They kept each other, competing well and striving. If they didn't do that well one year, they came back the next year. But the campus life included athletics was big, but the other activities that went on that were created by Lynn and Jim, through student activities and things like that, really made a difference. And a lot of times when those Hall of Famers talk, they talk about the other activities they were in and stuff like that meant so much to them growing up and during these formidable years.
Well, I know the sense of community that you just build from one generation to the other. Being involved in the women's basketball program, we would have an alumni scrimmage at the beginning of every year. And so being a part of the class in 1980, not too far from when it started, we would scrimmage against and then have a dinner with the women who came before us and get to hear their stories and what they majored in and what they were now doing as a profession. And a lot of times that was a foot in the door for some of us to get our first jobs or to find a job, part-time job. And then after we would graduate and we came back and were now the alumni to meet the further students and meet them and help mentor them and talk to them and find out where they were going. And even just a part of our basketball camps that we would have here. You know, all those girls' lives that we touched, they played on this floor in this gym. And then they would go and play high school ball, and they would come back to our events here. Maybe it's a holiday tournament. And then their kids started coming back. And just like in my own family, my youngest niece attended here and played volleyball and basketball because she was just a little bitty tyke when I played here and talked about my memories here. And so when she came here, that was just part of her life, and it's continued and she still speaks about the times that she played here, just like I do. And we reminisce about that. And even when I was in teaching, I had a couple of student athletes here that came and were student teachers in my same building or maybe under me. And so it just kind of continues. And there's nothing more that gives me more pleasure than to have a person that I coach maybe in basketball camp come back and say, you know, my daughter's now playing at Madison and she's thinking about coming to Mom. Or to see former players' daughters or sons come here and play. You know, that's just the feeling of community and family that we have here on this campus.
It's hard for me to express in words what this campus did for me, because I am not a Middletown person nor am I a Miami person, you know. So this place became family to me, and I learned how to be a coach because I was assistant coach with Jim, and he taught me how to be a coach. And I've appreciated that all my life. Well, since we've known each other. We haven't known each other forever. But like Sharon, you know, we have special memories of players over the years. I know Tim is here, and he mentored one of my better players who still holds a scoring record. And we still talk about those great years and those great players. We too have a player here who's the daughter of one of my players, you know, and it's just a special thing for players to recognize you that you've had over the years and come back and say something to you, or you meet in Walmart somewhere and they recognize you. And so being a part of this family and this program is special. And I always encourage what I'm doing now. I meet a lot of freshmen coming in, and I always encourage them, don't just go here to go to class. I mean, class is important, but come here to get involved with other things. There's so many great programs that are offered here. Student activity type programs, organizations, volunteer opportunities, and don't come here, drive your car, go to class, drive home. You just don't get that kind of experience doing that. You've got to be involved with something.
I want to pick up on one last point that Sharon mentioned. We now have students from other countries, and this is the new phase or the new phase for the Middletown campus. Our students coming in for our English language program, and more students are showing up on team pictures. Can you speak to that since it's something new?
Well, we have had a few of our students participate in some of our sports. The first that we had was Joseph, who played on our tennis team, and he's been a part of the men's program, and they've been champions. They have been ORC state champions for the last 3 years, and he's been on that team. and he's mostly at Oxford now with his program, but just like the student that Jim was talking about, he made an effort to be at Oxford and be here so that he could finish his last year here and be on the team. We've had a Chinese student play basketball. Last year second semester was his first year, and it was just an exciting time when he made his first basket on this floor. And he was excited, the team was excited, and I know he'll never forget that. And he's back with us this year playing again. So those are all promising us, hopefully, athletes that we've made a difference. Those coaches have made a difference in their lives, and it's been a wonderful experience.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you would like to include in the record from this interview?
We can always tell stories about traveling someplace, going through all the ice to get to someplace, and backing down the interstate because we couldn't get any farther. I mean, there's all kinds of stories that probably shouldn't be put in a history rendition for the years in the future, but they were all stories that helped us bond as team players, and we all knew that we were going to make the best of whatever situation that we were in. It didn't matter, if somebody was driving a van and they were changing drivers in the middle of
Caesar's Creek.
over Caesar's Creek, or we went to a state tournament once and woke up and there's like 4 feet of snow the next day, and we didn't know how we were going to get home. And in fact, one time we were in a bus, which we were lucky to have, and what was it? It was a blizzard.
They closed the highway.
They closed the highway. We couldn't get home. So we were stuck in Zanesville for a whole extra day. I'm thinking, now what are we going to do? For a whole extra day with these kids, that we've got to corral in a motel. Things like that. We probably shouldn't go into history.
You can edit that out.
But edit that out. But lots of good stories, and I think most,
Seriously, edit that out?
No, I was
This will be
kidding.
in a transcript, so I have to make sure I've got your permission to put the story.
You can keep that story. Yeah, you can keep that story in, but there's just lots of things that developed our program and made us all teammates and friends forever. As a coach, you have a lot of people that you touch, but you're lucky when you have a lot of them who are your friends as well.